Michael Kantor, welcome to Australian Musician.
Thank you so much.
You're the director of the Australian production of Lazarus the musical. I'm very excited about it. You must be.
Overexcited would be the word. Overexcited. It's an extraordinary privilege to be working on something that includes so many of Bowie's seminal songs, but also that Bowie oversaw it. He chose these songs, he put them in this order, he wanted this story told. Really interesting, because he knew he was dying. And these are the songs he put together for us to hear. It's kind of like a letter, I feel like, from Bowie, saying this all adds up to something, you know. In that classic Bowie way, there's always a message hidden in the bottle.
It's like his whole ending of life was choreographed.
I believe it was. And I think actually it's taken a few years now for us to now look at that work with that understanding. At the time, the people making the first production didn't know that. Actually, the director was slightly in on it, but Enda Walsh didn't know that actually Paul Bowie had a diagnosis of cancer. So I think that you now stand back from it and think this is a blueprint from Bowie about the questions one has when one approaches dying. And that's the way David Bowie could do things. You know, he could tackle very big questions in strange ways and wonderful ways and mysterious ways, and it really is like it's all the key is in the name of the show, Lazarus, which of course was the song from Death Star, I think, that's in the show, or the album before, Black Star, and Lazarus of course rises from the dead, and this show is about rising from the dead, dying and then rising from the dead, and transcendence. It's got the classic Bowie outsider figure character that Bowie often was drawn to, of these people who feel sort of an anxiety or an angst about their position in the world and question it and want to go further and are struggling as they do that. So the central character, Newton, who believes himself to be an alien, we have to question, is he an alien? Possibly. I mean, there's so much in Bowie which was about the stars, of course. But I don't think he's meant to be seen as an alien. I think he's a man who, a little bit delusional, but is struggling with trying to work out how one lives and therefore how one dies.
A very important musical for the production company. Yes. I imagine you took a lot of time casting the show.
We have. Over the last 4 months. Yes. I mean, the question was never to find a Bowie stand-in, because the show doesn't require it, and I think it's the wrong approach, but rather who are great actors, because what's required is very strong actors, and who can bring a distinctive voice to these seminal and very, very famous songs, so not try and mimic Bowie. So people like iOTA, who's an extraordinary singer from Sydney, brings his voice, and he can interpret Bowie's songs, and you need to interpret them. You can't just present them. You can't just mimic them. No one's as good as him at singing those songs. So, in some ways, Bowie wasn't the most brilliant singer in the world, but they were his material. He knew them, and he sang them in such a distinctive way. So we need to find our own way with each of them. And like you heard Phoebe sing Changes. She sings it like no one sings it. She sings it like it's so emotional, and it really feels like the fuck you that's in that song. She brings it out, the anger and the desire in it, and that's fantastic. That's what we need to do with all of them. We need to find just the tone that forces it into something new in a way. So yeah, it's not a Bowie like a best of Bowie retro concert. It's not that. It's
equally important are the musicians, and you've got the best of the best, I see.
I think we are. Look, I'm not totally on top of the choice of musicians because the musical director's collaborating with the production company, but it sounds like a phenomenal team is coming together.
The other top guys.
Yeah, they are. They really are. Yeah. So.
And your musical relationship with Bowie, how far back does that go?
To my older brother playing endless Bowie songs, so he was 10 years older than me, so all my life there's been Bowie music in my house and in my teenage years, and then as soon as I could sort of choose my own music, it was Bowie, really. I think the third album I bought was Ziggy Stardust, which I'd found in the back of, by that point it was up the back in the old record shops, and it's never stopped, really. It's never stopped. For some, I think with a lot of people, you chart your life a little bit through David Bowie. I certainly do. Like, I remember distinctly, the very first rock concert I ever went to was David Bowie, 1984, his, what do they call that tour? The Moonlight or something?
Serious Moonlight?
Serious Moonlight tour. which was like out at Sandown, but I was 16. I went once and I went back the second night. Bowie's just always been there. Apparently, though, he was actually really not well when he was here. He looked fantastic, but apparently it was actually one of his worst periods with sort of drug addiction and things. So it's interesting what you see and what, But it was the blue suit and the whole thing. It was fabulous.
Anyway, we get to celebrate his life with this musical, and we look forward to production when it starts in May.
May, yes.
Yeah, and thanks for talking to us.
Thank you very much.
Greg Phillips, back at Raheen, and we're here with iOTA from the production of Lazarus.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Not too bad. Tell me how you became involved in this production of Lazarus.
My agent messaged me and said that the production company were interested in seeing me to do it, and I was well and truly up for it. I've only heard a little bit about it, which is intriguing in itself, and I knew that Bowie had written it, and that it had been on Broadway, and it's something Bowie. It's something to do with Bowie that hasn't been done yet a lot by anyone in Australia, obviously, or by me, that I haven't done, because I've done a few Bowie things. It's just something new.
You said you've done a couple of Bowie things. Have you been a fan over the years?
Yeah, I have. Jeff Duff really introduced me to Bowie. I knew Let's Dance and China Girl in the 80s when I was a teenager, but it was Jeff that really made me go back to Ziggy Stardust, and that was the first full album that I heard. And I think I've always just been aware of him because I'm in the world, and he left a big mark. And I'm attracted to colour and glitter and rock and roll, so he's pretty attractive to me. Yeah.
So how are you approaching the role?
You know what? I have no idea. I haven't read the script.
Okay.
I don't know anything about the show. I've just been super, super busy, and I'm going home to Sydney tonight, and in the morning I'm going to wake up and read the script.
I guess that's not a bad way to approach things, with a fresh mind, not knowing anything from the beginning.
Yeah, that's. I talked to Michael a couple of months ago, and we both agreed, let's just not worry about it too much, or about doing any research on the other production. Let's just see what happens when we get in there.
And what else have you been up to lately?
I just came from Adelaide with the ASO doing James Bond theme songs, and I've been writing my own show and performing that in Perth, called Slap and Tickle. I'm always writing songs, and I did also a show at the Sydney Festival called Pigalle with Marcia Hines. That played for a month at the Spiegel tent, and that's kind of it.
Yeah. Well, we look forward to seeing you in Lazarus in May.
Can't wait. Thank you.
And of all people, with Simon Hosford.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, mate. We're here because the production company are launching the musical Lazarus, and you're in the band.
I am, although I was just in the band for the launch today, not the musical itself.
Okay. Yeah. You and Bowie, you friends from way back musically?
Yeah, we are actually. I'm not sure there'd be too many people that aren't. Bowie's one of those people, like, my parents had his records, and so I sort of grew up with that stuff, so it sort of permeates into your psyche. So even if you don't end up playing much music that's like Bowie's, but it's still in there rattling around always, those melodies and songs.
Mick Ronson had some great riffs and licks as well.
Absolutely, yeah, fantastic. I mean, back in those days, they put songs together so well. They were well recorded, the parts were really great, so yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah. Being involved, I know you're not doing the actual show, you just did launch here, but you have done stuff like this before. The difference between a musical gig and just your general pub gig?
They're quite different. different disciplines. Obviously, with a musical gig, and I've done a few of those now. Well, one thing is the repetition, of course. So you're doing the same thing pretty much note for note, exactly 8 times a week. But I guess the main difference really is that the concentration is on all the time. With a musical, you're following the musical director, you're also following the actors on the stage, whereas with a pub gig or a touring gig, the songs are so in your psyche, and you can sort of, everything's a bit looser. The focus is more on the entertainment and the energy on stage, and I think because people, even in the audience, know that if little things are wrong or little notes here and there, can be more forgiving. But in musical theatre, if you play one wrong note, everyone hears it, so yeah, different.